Is it true what they say that death, rituals, and rites exist only for the living? Have those who are dead no say in it? Have we an obligation to respect their wishes? Or once they're dead, it doesn't matter anymore? Is a burial place so important where it doesn't matter where one is laid to rest? Meet Selah, a woman who didn't ask for much from the living, but just for a small portion in her father's home from where to forever rest. Welcome to Invisible Dimensions, where we share our mystical, paranormal, and supernatural encounters. In our home area, most burials are conducted on Saturdays, not because of any cultural restrictions, but because officially it is not a working day. Hence, most people are free to attend. So bodies are mostly picked from morgues on Thursdays, then 2 nights vigils are observed in the deceased's home, then the Saturday burial. From time immemorial, my tribe has always buried its dead in front of the deceased's house. Unless someone is landless or homeless, we hardly do cemeteries. If someone dies without a house, one is always hurriedly constructed purposely for the funeral, so that he or she is buried directly in front of the house. If it is a kid or pre-adults, those not old enough to have their own homes, then they are buried in front of their parents' houses. Then there is this group of girls or women who are adults but unmarried for some reason or another. Those who are of a marriageable age but decide to remain single either by choice, through divorce, through ailments, being widowed, separation, amongst many other reasons. Unless otherwise, girls hardly build their houses in their father's homes. In case of such women's deaths, they are buried in their father's homes, not directly in front of their father's houses, though, but at the periphery of the compound, at the very edge, just next to the fence that separates the father's property from the next. This is the predicament that befell Selah. By the time she was 18, she was already a mother, but unmarried, still in her father's house. The boy who got her pregnant didn't want to marry her. He termed it an accident. Besides, he needed to finish his education first before settling down in marriage. His family accepted the baby, but they did not want Selah, now a school dropout. Selah was left to take care of the baby, though, until he came of age and was independent of his mother. That would be when he could be handed over to his father's side of the family. By the time Selah was 20, she was married off to some guy gracious enough to accept her with a child who wasn't his. The man decided he was only doing Selah a favor and never tired of reminding her that it was a loveless marriage. Selah bore him 2 children, a girl and a boy, before deciding to leave him because of his cruelty. Selah couldn't go back to his father's home with her 3 children. She had tried before, but she and her children had been made to feel they were unwelcome, they were a burden. Armed with a little cash she had saved as a casual laborer on people's farms, Selah rented a small 1-roomed house at the local market, moved in with her kids, tried her hand at various trades, from hawking second-hand clothes, vegetables, to finally settling on selling illicit brew. By the time she was a mature woman of 30, life had hardened her into a no-nonsense, small-scale businesswoman who could hold her own. Fate had been kind to her. She was now stable, but still in a poor, lower-class way. With the little she made from her alcohol sales, she was managing to take her kids to school, feeding them, and providing other basics. Through her savings with the local women's merry-go-round, she had managed to buy herself a small piece of land. She had dreams of building her own home. someday. Now that she was independent and still considerably young, a good number of marriage proposals came her way. She managed to turn most of her suitors down, but there was one who was persistent. A few years shy of 40, Selah got married again. But with men, fate had dealt her a raw deal. It was the one thing she never got right, finding a good man. Fate refused to be merciful to her, and again, after about 3 years, they separated. To make matters worse, at that time, she was ailing. Her business needed her to be hands-on, and it didn't survive her long bouts of absentia. At 40, Selah decided to go back to her parents' home. She had hit rock bottom. Fortunately or unfortunately, she bore no children with her second husband. In her father's house, Selah was constantly reminded of all the mistakes she'd made in her teenagehood and deep into adulthood. Her failure to finish school due to early pregnancy, her failure to sustain her first marriage to a man who had been gracious enough to take her in with her bastard child, her failure to sustain her second marriage as well. And now, here she was, back home, ailing. She was indeed the black sheep of the family. She admitted all her faults. She was remorseful. She agreed she had made bad choices and deserved no mercy. She understood that she deserved to suffer the consequences of her sins. She took it all in stride. She only begged for one thing, that when she died, she should be buried in her father's home, their home, where she had grown up, where she was raised. In spite of its imperfections, her parents' home was the only place she found a little semblance of peace. Her most happiest memories were in that home, and that was the place from where she wanted to rest. She knew it would be a tall order, being buried in her father's compound. She had had 3 men in her life who could claim her when she died. The first man, now a successful judge, having completed his studies and excelled, had never wanted to associate with her. Yes, his family had claimed the son he sired with her, albeit reluctantly. They had taken the boy in, but he was never shown any love. Whereas the judge's legitimate children were excelling in various disciplines, Selah's son had been problematic, dropped out of university, and was now a drug addict. If the boy had turned out well, maybe, just maybe, he could have claimed Selah and taken responsibility for her. Then there was her first husband, with whom Selah had 2 children. At this time, when Selah was ailing, they were both at the local day secondary school, yet to make something out of themselves in this life. So they couldn't do much for her. Besides, Selah's first husband had remarried, and the other woman couldn't allow another woman's grave in her home. There was the small piece of land she had bought from her illicit brew business, but she hadn't established her home there yet. She didn't want to be buried there. She thought she would be lonely, just laying there alone. Besides, a grave on that piece of land would lower its value. Yet, it was the only property she wanted to pass over to her children as inheritance. And finally, there was her second husband, the one she had been living with just before she started ailing and moved back into her parents' home. The man was a shameless, shrewd, merciless opportunist who had only married her because he had seen just how enterprising she was, and her business had been thriving at that time. When Selah began to ail and it became apparent that she was no longer bringing anything to the table, but she had become a burden instead, the man had hastily shown her the door. Selah had there and then vowed never to return, either dead or alive. And now Here she was on her deathbed, not knowing where she would be laid to rest, and this predicament allowed her no peace. Her father had died when they were still very young. Her mother had raised all the 7 of them single-handedly. Her 3 other sisters were well married and settled in their homes. Same to her 3 brothers. It was only Selah who hadn't turned out well. Where she would be buried gave her sleepless nights because her father's land had already been subdivided amongst the 3 sons, and it would be hard for any one of them to allow her be buried on their portions. It was tradition for the youngest son to inherit their father's compound. Her mother was still alive, but for her, there was no problem. If and when she died, she would be laid to rest beside her husband. Clearly, it was only Selah who was lacking space. She was considered a burden, but she had to ask anyway. "Mama," she whispered to her mother one day, her voice frail. "Please, I would like to be buried here at home when I die. I have no any other place." Her brother's wife hit the roof when she heard Selah's request. That wayward woman, moving from one man to another and another. She thundered, "How can I allow her be buried on my land? Is it my fault that one man could never be enough for her over my dead body? When she dies, she will not be buried in this home, lest she brings bad luck on my daughters. They may never settle down, just as she did." Selah was heartbroken that her sister-in-law could speak so harshly of her, but being that weak, there wasn't much she could do. She kept on imploring her mother and last-born brother to allow her be buried in her father's home. Then the day soon came when Selah breathed her last. Besides her children and her mother, who mourned for her, the others were relieved that she was no longer a burden. It was good riddance. Even as they moved her body to the morgue, the big question remained: where would she be laid to rest? Luckily, they did not have to worry for long. As soon as the second husband received news that Selah was dead, he hastily went to claim her as his wife. The woman she had mistreated and abandoned during her illness, he now loved in death and wanted to do right by her. However, it was not out of the goodness of his heart. The man, being the shrewd, calculative bastard that he was, had been informed that there were good prospects on the small land that Selah had bought, and an investor was looking to buy it. The price had gone upward to over 2 million. This man knew that if he buried Selah, then he would automatically become his next of kin and could lay claim to whatever assets she owned. Doing quick calculations, the man realized that he only needed at most 200,000 shillings to bury Selah, a small price to pay if you are staring millions in the face. 200,000 was money he could easily raise from family and friends. Customarily, the man was required to pay dowry to claim Selah as his wife. Armed with the money he'd collected, he bought an old cheap cow at the market and took it to Selah's home. Relieved, Selah's family hastily agreed to the arrangement. They were not yet aware of the gold prospects on Selah's plot. At least, this man was offering them a solution to the issue of an unwanted grave in their home and the funeral expenses. It was only Selah's children who didn't support this arrangement. But what could they do? They had neither the power nor the resources to control anything. On this Thursday morning, friends and family gathered at the morgue to pick Selah's body and take her to her second husband's home, with whom they had no children. for burial later on Saturday. The required fees was paid and the body handed over to the family. The body was placed in the van, acting as a hearse, with the Sellah's mother, her estranged second husband, her firstborn brother, her lastborn brother, all her 3 children accompanying it. Then followed a hired school bus with the church people singing, with a few other vehicles carrying other relatives. The funeral procession snaked through the morning traffic without incident, the hearse at the front, until they started going downhill just before River Isioho. Nobody can explain what really happened, but it was later said that the hearse driver was still a learner. The unimaginable happened. The hearse lost control and speeded downhill. From the opposite direction, down sped a huge truck carrying sugarcane. They both met in the valley, colliding head-on, nearly plunging into the river below. The van was all scratched up. It was chaotic. It was tragic. It was catastrophic. It was such a horrific scene. Sprawled in the middle of the road was Selah, in full display, dressed in all virginal white, out of the coffin, which had been crushed to smithereens. Everything was in disarray. Surprisingly, Sellah's body was completely intact. It did not look as though it had been in such a grisly accident. Although embalmed, her body looked ghostly. Once in a while, the wind would blow, lifting up Sellah's clothes and gracefully exposing her ghastly flesh to the crowd. The wig that had been placed on her head lay strewn nearby. One of her white rubber shoes lay across the road. There she lay, hideously majestic, in loathsome splendor for all and sundry to see, as if proving a point even in death. A little distance from her, on one side, lay her estranged husband, dead. On the other side was her mother, also dead. Her last-born brother also died on the spot. The driver and his first-born brother got multiple fractures. Miraculously, all her 3 children walked from the wreckage unscathed. Thousands of people gathered to watch this horrendous scene. Luckily, none of the other vehicles on the convoy was involved in the accident. It was only by grace, considering just how close they had all been. The police had trouble controlling traffic and the surging mammoth crowd. It was the very first time for most people to see a corpse involved in an accident, and to make matters worse, claiming many more other lives. People dreadfully gawked at the gruesome sight. It is one thing to view a body from a safe distance at the morgue or in a coffin. It is quite another to see someone who had been dead for days already embalmed, sprawled right in the middle of the road. This witch, Selah, her relatives lamented, wailing, causing chaos even in death. Was it a must? She claims the lives of other people. This woman has lived her life recklessly, always causing trouble, problematic, dramatic, and even to the end, she refused to go quietly alone. Even as the bodies of the other 3 were easily and quickly collected and taken to the morgue, Sellah's lay there for some time. Even the police were afraid to touch a corpse who had died twice. Those of us who are superstitious concluded that this was Sellah's one last defiant act. All the poor woman had wanted was a place of her choice where her bones could rest in peace. And seeing that even in death, life was still treating her cruelly, she decided to do something for herself once and for all. Where would you like to be buried? Have you ever given it much thought? It seems insignificant, doesn't it? Where you are laid to rest. After all, you're dead, and the dead know nothing, right? But look at Jacob in the Bible. In Genesis 49, he gives explicit instructions on where to be buried. The Bible says he commanded them, "Bury me with my fathers." Joseph also gave instructions concerning his remains. In Genesis 15, he makes the sons of Israel swear to carry his bones from Egypt to Israel when the time comes. So does it matter where we are buried? Was Selah's request to be buried on her father's land too much to ask for? The poor woman had only wanted to rest with her ancestors. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share to help our channel grow. Bye.